Hello, my name is Chris Livesey, and the group members of my team are Steve Laser and Dale Reynolds. This presentation is focused on Napster and will examine the rise and fall of the company. We chose this company because of its incredible rate of users and popularity, along with its impact on the music industry as a whole. Napster was first launched in 1999 and quickly rose in popularity as Internet users discovered the service's huge potential. All that was required to join the Napster network was to create a free account via a username and password. At the height of Napster's popularity, there were approximately 80 million users registered on its network. In fact, it was so popular that many colleges had to block the use of Napster because of network congestion caused by students obtaining music using peer-to-peer file sharing. The big advantage for many users was the fact that there was a vast amount of music that could be downloaded for free. Just about every type of music genre was on tap in the MP3 format, originating from audio sources such as analog cassette tapes, vinyl records, and CDs. Napster was also a useful resource for people looking to download rare albums, bootleg recordings, and the latest chart toppers. However, the Napster file sharing service didn't last that long due to the lack of control on the transfer of copyrighted material across its network. Napster's illegal operations were soon on the radar of the RIAA, which is the Recording Industry Association of America, who filed a lawsuit against it for the unauthorized distribution of copyrighted material. After a long court battle, the RIAA eventually obtained an injunction from the courts which forced Napster to shut down its network in 2001 for good. Napster provided a peer-to-peer network enabling users to share music files. A user downloaded the free Napster software and nominated a folder on his or her hard drive on which to store downloaded music and music available to be accessed by other users. The software added the titles of the music files to a central directory to enable searching by other users. A user could then search for music titles and download these files directly from the folders of other users. The music files themselves did not exist on a central directory, but were transferred directly from the computer of one user to another user, hence the name peer-to-peer. Napster's financial performance is interesting, because the intent for their software was to offer the public a free peer-to-peer file sharing service. All of the money which Napster had up to the point of their acquisition by Roxio was a result of investments by various venture capitalists. Therefore, an analysis of Napster's financial performance would actually be an analysis of capital received from investors over time. With the financial risk was the investors. There were other risks for the founders. The nature of the software brought legal risk to the founders and the company name. Creating a file-sharing service which allowed people to share copyrighted materials made Napster vulnerable to a host of legal repercussions. Receiving capital from venture capitalists also forced the founder to relinquish much of their decision-making power. Although this is sometimes a negative consequence of using venture capitalists, the young entrepreneurs likely benefited from their knowledge and experience offered by the firms. From a finance and investment perspective, Napster was a VC-backed company that was unable to grow to its full potential because of legal constraints. Before its shutdown, the company raised $65.4 million in 2 years. This shutdown was a result from the company not fully understanding its judiciary responsibility and the legal ramifications it would have on the company financially. Napster used technological innovation in the same manner. In the late 90s, the reliability of dial-up modems and the innovation of broadband access primed the Internet for a peer-to-peer file-sharing program. Napster started as an idea shared among friends and quickly leaked, making it accessible to millions of people. Napster never advertised because it didn't need to. Other file-sharing programs existed prior to its release, but Napster made peer-to-peer file sharing easy. That was the technological innovation that made Napster so popular without them even trying. At the peak, they attracted 80 million customers because of the popularity of their innovation. By viewing Napster through the lens of a SWOT analysis, its internal and external factors become clear. In order to improve the company's position, it needs to improve its weaknesses and be aware of its threats. The most dominant weakness is its poor relationship with existing recording companies. Regulation typically lags innovation and often has to face the strongest pushback when disrupting the way in the industry base traditionally worked. Napster had the first mover advantage, being the first to market. The lack of strategic business and marketing planning, as well as failing to partner with the record companies in a legal manner, ultimately caused Napster to cease operations. Failing to capitalize on their advantage ultimately paved the way for other new entrants to enter the market. Competing digital music sites had the second mover advantage, learning from Napster's mistakes, as digital music technology was here to stay. However, it had to be conducted in a legal and ethical manner. Napster was a disruptive technology that was on a course to forever change the music industry. Even though they didn't have a solid marketing plan, their ability to instantly connect individuals and enable them to instantly share music was quickly embraced by the users. Napster, being the first to enter this space, naturally captured a great majority of the users. The main reason why Napster wasn't able to maintain its trajectory to success was because of their relationship with the record labels. These record label companies saw Napster as a threat and the leading cause for their losses in a business. Ultimately, they thought if Napster was crushed out of the existence, the problem would go away. Because Napster didn't build a better business model by understanding their weaknesses and threats, they would eventually be forced into bankruptcy by the recording labels. This bankruptcy didn't solve the recording labels issue because other companies similar to Napster sprouted up overnight after Napster's demise. If Napster had an HR-centric individual overseeing and guiding the company, it could have benefited greatly. Even though the company had an outstanding commitment and engagement with its employees, they lacked the ability to fully understand its impact from a legality perspective. If an experienced HR person was overseeing the operations of the company, they might have prevented the team from operating in a free from legal constraints mindset. Napster should have installed an HR team with an attention on the following 4 areas to maximize its ability to aid the company's success. First, the business model: money, market, and product problems. It may appear that the HR department has no purpose in marketing, cash flow, product development, etc. Nevertheless, particular disciplines of organizational development include knowledge of what needs need to be accomplished. Second would be the team. HRD and OD individuals have a plethora of methods in aiding teams to discover any issues that may arise within a workforce environment. Third is focus. An HR individual understands how to influence in ways to reduce the negative impression and inspires a deep sense of engagement, collaboration, and commitment. Last and fourth is scale. This can be accomplished through a talent management. HR can identify what future talent is likely to be needed and where it may come from. If Napster had an HR team that was focused on the above action items, they would have most likely kept disruption to a minimum within the company. As a startup, Napster was fairly consistent with most small organizations in not having an HR-centric individual. The failure of Napster was a result of poor planning, decision-making, and arrogant executives. Would an HR-centric individual have been able to prevent the downfall by providing direction and structure in an environment that was so fast-moving that it was in reactionary mode? There is no way to know for sure, but utilizing theory, we would be able to surmise that there is a good chance the company would have benefited from HR support and potentially could have been better off than its ultimate demise in the end. While operations management sounds as though it would be limited to large companies with extensive capital equipment and a large staff, it's also at work in very small companies. Also, the role of an operations manager is not limited to that title. A startup company with 5 or 6 people has operations that need to be managed. They may not be big enough to have the need for a specific operations manager. Instead, the CEO of the startup would take on this role. Napster followed this method for their operations management. Once Napster started receiving funding from venture capitalists, deals were made to insert new leadership to replace the founders. These new CEOs were managing a handful of programmers, in turn assuming the role of operations manager. Breaking down Napster with the transformational model shows a very simple transformation from inputs to outputs. Their transforming inputs are their staff, servers, computers, and building. Their transformed inputs are information in the form of code. The transformational process would fall into the services category. Napster programmers were using their knowledge in coding to create a service which allowed customers to perform peer-to-peer sharing of information. The output, of course, was the program itself. Napster's approach for their product development was from both a collaborative approach and a rapid prototyping. The company's main coder, Sean Fanning, was a member of an online hacking chat room known as WooWoo, who used the collaboration of its members' knowledge to push an idea for Napster. The base ideology for the group was encountering positive collaborative research in ways that not only benefited the community, but also could act as a launching pad for the success of the individual members. When trying to be efficient and improve quality in product development and launch, collaborative design work becomes an essential component. The second approach Napster used was for the product development of rapid prototyping. This design approach involved iterating quickly and often which serves a mechanism for quick development. The process involves building a prototype, testing the prototype, revising the design, retesting, and so on, until a viable design is determined. Napster's approach wasn't totally wrong. They had a great idea, but lacked the ability to fully understand its judicial responsibilities. The company initially launched a winning product and iterated quickly through its short stint. In the beginning, Napster was very successful in their peer-to-peer music sharing business. Operationally, their product and process were extremely popular, changing the overall aspect of purchasing or, in the case, obtaining music. Their product design was simple, free software that could be used to retrieve music from others, essentially creating an unlimited universe of MP3 music. Their collaborative approach, along with rapid prototyping of their sharing software, was one element making it possible, the other being the network consisting of servers and the internet that made it all possible. There was a level of quality control involved in the development and testing of the software. As in the case with all software, there were new enhancements and better versions that were tested for quality and function before they were made possible for the customers. The servers and the functioning of the infrastructure was the secondary component, also requiring a plan and quality control measures. Since Napster's short run as a functioning company, there have been very few changes in the concepts of internal and external communications. Horizontal and vertical communications still function for the same purpose of information exchange amongst employees. External communications are still used to convey information to the public, customers, and media outlets. Communication theories have led to changing trends in communication exercises and platforms. In relation to Napster, the major applicable changes have happened in the form of technology and social media. Around the start of the new millennium, the internet was just starting to become a tool which was accessible and useful to anyone with interest. Around this time, the Internet Relay Chat, IRC, or chat rooms as they're more commonly referred to, had gained popularity amongst internet users. At the very beginning of Napster's existence, Sean Fanning used a chat room called WooWoo to get help from fellow developers that led to its unintentional leak to the public. This chat room was an essential communication source for Napster. Aside from its use as a launch platform, The chat room is where Fanning would meet up with Napster co-founder Jordan Ritter. While IRCs still exist today, they have evolved and led to new social media platforms with the changing of technology. If Napster was still functioning today, they would most likely be using platforms such as Slack or Trello to communicate internally. External communication would still function in the traditional sense using email, phones, and press releases, but they would most likely be using social media platforms such as Instagram or Facebook to directly reach their customers. Napster's ability to manage conflict externally wasn't ideal, and because of this, they continue to push the Recording Industry Association of America away from reaching an agreement. This can be seen by the RIAA reactions when they filed a lawsuit against the makers of the MP3 trading program Napster, accusing them of operating a haven for music piracy on an unprecedented scale. The RIAA made a statement saying Napster is about facilitating piracy and trying to build a business on the backs of artists and copyright holders. As Napster continued to operate without fully comprehending to its poor stance of effectively managing its conflict with the RIAA, it continued to put its stakeholders at risk. The current CEO, Eileen Richardson of Napster, and her team of executives were blinded by the company's rapid success. As a result, Richardson had a chance to circumvent the RIAA's legal action. Instead, she and her associates repeatedly told anyone who would listen they would run Napster with or without the record labels. This was the type of communication and mindset that put the company at a disadvantage from the start and would ultimately be the leading reason for the company to be shut down. In addition, those statements set a tone for the contentious relationship between the technology industry and the entertainment industry and countless other legal and physiological fights. Napster dealt with three different avenues of communication. They used internal communication to manage the work of their employees. External communication was necessary to release their product to the world and interact with stakeholders. The exchange or communication of information between peers was the product of their business. Napster had the unfortunate luck of being the first company to facilitate peer-to-peer information exchanges and test the boundaries of ethics and copyright laws. While Napster enjoyed explosive growth in the time of functioning as an organization, their downfall was ultimately caused by poor conflict management between Napster facilitators and the music industry. From a group perspective, Napster had its talent early on with Sean Fanning, John Fanning, and Sean Parker. They were able to move the operation to California and successfully expand the small group into a successful music sharing business. The odds of any startup making it into the winner's circle was a long shot. The trio were able to bring in funding, talent, and diverse individuals that cohesively worked together to establish a competitive startup business. To cope with this viral growth, John, Amran, and Sean determined they needed to bring in a CEO to run the company. Bill Bates suggested Eileen Richardson, a Boston venture capitalist he knew. Richardson became Napster's first CEO in 1999. Napster's leadership was lacking from its beginning, since it was being controlled by three people who had little experience managing a rapidly growing international company. They all lacked any real business sense needed to tackle the business sector that was ahead. To compound their leadership issues, even ownership was in question from the start. Napster had an organizational culture very similar to present-day millennial startups. Ali Adar describes his time at Napster as being exciting and productive, but very informal. Marathon coding sessions were fueled by loud hip-hop music and direct deliveries from a new company called Red Bull. Their culture was obviously effective as it was the foundation for their rapid success. Napster's demise was not as much the result of internal conflict as it was poor decision-making. It is arguable that they were not functioning long enough for an internal problem to present itself as a major threat. It was outside forces in the form of legalities which crippled the company. Had they been more adaptable to the changes, that the music industry brought to the table, they would have been able to achieve their mission of transitioning to a subscription-based peer-to-peer file sharing service. Napster had the unfortunate luck of having a talent team of individuals with a lack of experienced leadership. From a product standpoint, they leveraged their programmers as a resource in such a way that their product was extremely successful. So successful that in fact it became realized the fastest growing customer base in history. Their founder, Sean Fanning, was also inexperienced to run such a company on his own. While he and his associated partners were successful in obtaining venture capitalist funds to back the endeavor, it came at the price of new VC chosen leadership, Eileen Richardson. Fanning and Richardson relied too much on the internal explosive success of Napster to carry through their legal troubles. A leader who could recognize this would have been a key to successfully carrying Napster to the next millennium. Napster changed the world by developing and deploying a product that was adopted by millions of people within a very short period of time. This unprecedented speed of growth was contributed to the ease of its use, which allowed music to be shared amongst its users. This sharing of music content was done over a peer-to-peer network and allowed each end user to view and download music content from other users within the network. This explosive growth didn't come without problems, and the company lacked leadership for the scope of this emerging technology. Sean Fanning lacked business experience. While the team was successful in obtaining venture capitalist funds, it came with the price of a new VC chosen leadership. The rapid growth and success carried them through their legal troubles. A solid leader would have recognized and been the key to a successful business. The other issue Napster faced was from a legal perspective. The RIAA, the Recording Industry Association of America, sued Napster on behalf of the major record labels. The two companies fought it out in court, but Napster eventually lost and was eventually shut down. In the end, Napster had an industry transforming idea, but lacked the leadership, vision, and legality perspective to launch and deploy it correctly. The peer-to-peer music sharing service was revolutionary, ultimately changing the music sharing and distribution landscape. If it was not Napster, there would have been eventually a startup company that would have taken their place encountering similar evolutionary issues. Napster failed to implement a successful business plan from the start. There were many preliminary issues that were not properly cared for that ultimately impeded their success. It was obvious that the music industry felt there was an ethical issue with the exchange of copyright music. Napster founders should have capitalized on the technology by protecting their intellectual property and software and peer-to-peer music sharing through the use of patents. By partnering with the RIAA and the music copyright owners, they could have planned and agreed upon a cost structure such as offering a monthly paid subscription and charge a royalty fee for each song. The copyright owners could have assisted with the financing, and legal teams could have solidified the company foundation from the start. Working with the music industry, they would have found middle ground, eliminating the conflict. They should have invested the time to develop an HR team that would have been able to support the company in areas of legal and critical business decisions and functions. This additional infrastructure of advisors and services, especially early on, would have reduced much of the risk and allowed the founders and leaders to focus on their attention on the segments of the business that maximize value by minimizing risk and increasing efficiency. They suffered with major problems that were also in their leadership. As Napster gained traction and started seeing accelerated growth, they would have benefited from hiring a consultant to find leadership with the right skill set to carry them through the growth phase and assist with critical business decisions and functions. Fanning could have felt pressure by Bill Bates to choose Eileen Richardson as their CEO because of his venture capitalist status, but their explosive growth may have impaired their judgment as well. Both Fanning and Richardson had a too big to fail attitude. Choosing a leader with the right experience and vision to see past this type of assumption may have ultimately saved the company. The most dominant threat to Napster as a company was from the legal perspective. Instead of taking a strong stance by not working with the record labels, they should have embraced it and worked with them. By crafting a business model that included the interest of the record labels, they could have brought them on board and encouraged a partnership agreement. If Napster took this approach from the beginning, they could have established themselves as a leader for online music distribution. And here is the references section. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to hearing your feedback.